all here? Yep, the doors are closing, so now I can say it. Aloha. Thank you. I think Dr. Linda prepped you guys. I saw her. She's getting you going this way. I got to do that. The closer we get, the more alohas. Let's see. Okay. If you've got some feedback from these talks, please share them with the cruise director. They like to get the feedback of something you'd like more of, more song and dancing, whatever it is that floats your boat, let us know. Because today's talk is about island biodiversity and species radiation. And I saw a lady with a genetics shirt, and it was thematically appropriate for today, because everything's related to everything. Keep that in mind. We might think we're special, and we are, but we're all in the same family. I like this image because it has to do with what are some of the influences in Hawaii in the chain. And you can see on the leeward side of the big island, Hawaii, you can see ripples, and because the wind's coming and the waves are coming and the rain's coming from the northeast. And you can see the influence, and you can see, okay, clouds and green on the north side, and it's a little drier on the south side, and it goes all the way up there. So these are the things that influenced the biodiversity. That's how it all got here and what kept it here. So when we think of what influenced the biodiversity, Hawaii's biome, we can think about the wind, wave, weather, rain, and how it impacted what came and what grew on the islands. So today we're going to talk about adaptive radiation, a little bit about recent history, and some species examples. And the challenge with the species examples, I'm going to show you a lot of images quickly, because there's so many. But the ones that get you excited, we can talk about it later, and you can go look forward to it. But there are so many that we couldn't possibly handle them all. It's like going to a wedding where you got 200-300 people that you haven't seen in 10, 20 years, and you got 5 minutes to talk to them, sort of. It's that way. There are so many beautiful, wonderful species, but the colors, etc., are so wonderful, I have to share them. Now, the biosphere for Hawaii was forged by nature and humans. Nature and humans coming together, and its distinctive geography, where it's located. That location is important. Any realtor can tell you, right, the three things for selling real estate: location, location, location. Well, that also drives the Hawaiian Islands. So we look at the major factors that are driving it. Volcanism, we've talked about that. And if we go to the Big Island and you go on, you might be able to see some because that stuff's bubbling up as we speak. Climate and weather, of course. Geography, yay, geography. Oceanography. Evolution, if you don't think Darwin was crazy, had a big influence. And colonization by humans and the plants and animals. So we always start with volcanoes because they're cool. Everybody loves volcanoes. Now I'll use the word island biogeography because they're islands, but there's another kind of island, the kapuka, which is the land that's left when a volcano erupts and lava burns everything, but there's remnants of land. So that's also an island. And that also, the forces that created Hawaii with species, the same thing happens at a microscale on these areas. So both kind of islands. The gentleman who we owe most to in the science is a guy named Alexander von Humboldt. He was born in Berlin. So is he a German or is he a Prussian? Well, he was a Prussian at that time. And he was what they call a polymath. And a polymath he was, because not only was he the smartest guy around, and Thomas Jefferson himself, who met with him, and they spent a week or so, because he taught him about South America and areas that Thomas Jefferson was interested, And he was interested in going to meet Thomas Jefferson because Thomas Jefferson was a scientist. And absolutely. So this guy was off the charts. But then he got on the charts when they named the Humboldt Current after him, right? So he was on the charts. And that's the Peruvian current that goes up South America. You've heard of the Humboldt, Peruvian. Where it impacts our lives is that's where La Nina and El Nino occur. So the cold waters are coming up South America off of Peru. And because they're cold and cool, there's no heat coming off, forming vapor into the atmosphere. And the Atacama Desert, which has been known to not get rain for up to 100 years, is a result of that current. So Humboldt name has been used and now is charted. And just a phenomenal guy. He taught us about biodiversity. He taught us about all kinds of things about the climate and weather and how it impacted the species of plants and animals around the world. He's also known as unity of nature. He was saying this is all connected. He wasn't into separating. He was into combining. And just brilliant, brilliant. If you ever get a chance to read about him, fascinating guy, absolutely. Traveled the world. He lived to 89. And I'm going, wow, because he was trudging through tropical forests all over the world. And they hadn't invented penicillin in those days. So you just think about he was just one of the luckiest guys on the planet. So highly recommend learning about Alexander von Humboldt. Brilliant man. And if you're an environmental scientist or anybody, definitely got to read about him. Because he helped explain what goes on in islands. And there's a sequence that we get trained to understand. Once you have your raw island and the volcano comes up, first you have the continent, which is coming up with the gene pool. Then they disperse, get established on an island. In that establishment, assemble, come together, be creative, and then evolution moves the different species apart. And Darwin, of course, helped us understand that off of the finches, off of the Galapagos. So we had the same species originally, and it went into different areas depending upon their habits. So if they were nutcrackers, they had really strong beaks. If they really liked insects, they peck into trees. So all these different kinds of finches from one little island. Adaptive radiation is the term we give for that evolutionary process that happens on islands. And it's fascinating. Here in Hawaii, or where we're going, we see a species called the honey creepers. So not the finches, but the honey creepers. And they ended up going into all kinds of directions. So one great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather or grandmother, I would think the grandmother was important. So way back there, the founder species, which no longer exists, spreading out and saying now there's about 13 species left. There was 50 up till not that long ago, but we'll talk about that. So the family tree, everybody's related. We have the same analogy for the humans. And guess what? It's the same process, more or less. So we see the Kennedy clan and other clans, and you go, yeah, they look alike. They kind of look alike. And we say, why? And we say, why? Because we've learned things about genetics. So when you send off your money to your favorite Who's Your Daddy genetic identification, then find out who you're related to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you go, it's amazing. How come sisters and brothers and mothers and daughters and fathers and sons look alike? Genetics. And that's the same thing that kicks off the biodiversity for the animals, the birds, the plants, well, and plants as well. So this same process works in our animal kingdom. So all these creatures, same process, genetics started, they end up in a beautiful array, and which makes the world so pretty because there's such a variety. And the same thing with humans. If it wasn't for genetics, we'd get kind of bored if everybody looked the same and acted the same, right? So it's that enrichment of variety that makes life so much more exciting and worth living. So this is the Hawaii expression of adaptive radiation. And you see once again a honey creeper that came along, and because they have different eating habits, they fill out different niches. That's a spot in the ecosystem that no one else has taken over, and because their beak happened to make it work real well for eating a certain species, et cetera, a certain kind of seed, they then thrive, survive, and their offspring end up having that same beak, because after all, your parents' beak looks like your beak, right? And so if you got a big schnauzer, you know where you inherited it. So hey, thanks a lot, Dad. Oh, well. But in the animal kingdom and the birds, these are the guys, like our friend Darwin's finches, these are the guys that formed most of the birds, many of the birds. Not all of them, but many, many, many. So they're the analog to Darwin's finches or Hawaii's honey creepers. Say that 10 times. So it's a spectacular example when we look at that and go, really? All from the same line? So it's like raising dogs, raising horses, and looking at the great range of different types. Only with dogs, it's because we picked the ones out and raised them. Here, nature picked them out and raised them. So it's different process. And of course, this adaptive radiation included with the humans. So Professor Pauline, I think Mike talked about it, and Linda talked about it, and Simon. So we've all talked about the Polynesian, this adaptive radiation, and how they got there. Again, if you've got a grandchild, take them out, see Moana. It's extremely accurate in the navigational processes that the Polynesians used to do all that traveling. And you'll get a couple brownie points from your granddaughter or grandson. Okay. Now, when they started running around in these boats, they landed various places out in the Pacific, and indeed right here in Hawaii. Prior to Western landing here, the Hawaiians had actually worked out a decent system. And that system allowed them to develop as much of the environment as they needed to, but protect the environment as well. So they were one of the first in terms of sustainability in practice. And I'll show another slide later. There was actually a job for the guy that was in charge of making sure people followed by the rules. Because if they don't, then things go downhill. We start in the Hawaii Islands with the landform and the vegetation. So I'll go through some of this and you'll read, okay, this is how much it's changed. So here we see pre-human, before the first Polynesians. This is the vegetation that we have here. So we can see montane wet forest over there. Look, human footprint is purple. And of course, there's no purple there because it's before human landing. And then we come over and we look at the impact, and that's not all modern. That's just since the Hawaiians came in and started changing things as well. So significant difference once humans land someplace, to say the least. And we can blame our ancestors, we can blame anybody we want, but it's a reality and it's what we lived with. I talked about the wind and the weather, and I previously discussed the fact that north side, east, wet, south side, dry. So Kona coffee comes from the dry side of the Big Island. It prefers less moisture, less tropical rain. Because Kona, where you're going to, it's over there by Kailua. So again, this is a major influence on the distribution and the survival of these species. Now we'll look through it a couple real quick, each island. We're going to look at, yeah, I can do it. We'll look at before. This is, before human arrival. And what do we want? We can look at anything you want. Pick a color and look at it, because this is what's going to happen. Hey, no, it's not. I'm going the wrong way. This is what's going to happen. So, okay, get practiced on this. The gray, non-native. Previously, pioneering, low dry. So we see that, yeah, significant change in terms of the landscape and the vegetation. No one to blame, they're all gone. Native pioneer, this is before, up in Maui, which you'll go to, and this is later. So there's what it's like in its native, a lot of lowland native pioneering, and now, boom, what do we got? Non-native. So really significant shifts in the landscape, and of course that's the foundation of the biodiversity. Here we got Oahu, and you can see, what do we got there? Native, all right? And then we look at it. So before, after, before, after. So some significant changes. We could take a map of the United States and do the same thing. California, Mississippi, Wisconsin. So it's happening everywhere. And I will not go through all of it, just saying from alpine to coastal, etc., all these landscapes, and they write, what are the challenges there? But I don't want to talk about threats. That's no fun. So this is the, who are these guys? They're in Honolulu. I'm trying to remember. It's the state of Hawaii. But this is where they have defined the various conservation and biodiversity. So they're paying attention. If you're going to invest and try to protect species, be smart about it. Do it where it's going to have the most bang for your buck. And that's what the issue is. So if you study, okay, where should we protect species? Well, we want to turn it back to the way it used to be. And you go, really? That's not going to happen on our watch. So let's protect what we've got as best we can from its genetics so that we can save as much as we can so we can share with generations that will come behind us and have them appreciate it as well. And that's what the government and the biologists and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, that's our collective goal, is to protect the most important things we can have to try to prevent loss of species. And we talk about loss of species. Well, again, Hawaii is the poster child for bird extinction. I'll just say that right now. It is the number one. Okay, let's start with the fish. We love the fish. Are they not the most beautiful fish in the world? Absolutely gorgeous. And they got cute little names because the Hawaiians have named everything long before they found a scientist coming aboard. They already had a name for the fish. And they could tell you which ones tasted good, which ones don't taste so good. Now, the one that you need to know about from all of these fish is that one in the lower left, right? So this is the class. We're going to learn to say, all right, hama hama nuka nuka apawaha. All right, everybody, we're going to say, right? Hama hama nuka nuka apawaha. You will impress friends and neighbors and Hawaiians when you go to say that. We'll do it again when we run into it. It's a beautiful fish. And so it's like, yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Very proud of you. That sounded good. Okay, so the tangs, the wrasses. Wrasses are very important. Wrasses are kind of like the gas station in the ocean. All the fish come up there, not just fish, sharks, well, they're fish, turtles. And they go to the cleaning station. There's the spots where they know to go. And so they cruise up, and the wrasses, which are little guys, come in there and eat all the things off their shells, any parasites, various things. The little wrasses come in and clean them. The fish don't eat them because they know they're the cleaners. So wrasses are cool, and that one's just got to be the most pretty. Awila, Christmas wrasse, good name for it, huh? Definitely. So wrasses are cool. We've got many other cool fish here, to say the least, and they've all got a different name. Now, I played the trumpet and cornet, so I always thought that was kind of neat that they had two fish. I also played the French horn. They do not have a French hornfish, but that's okay. Can't expect everything. Now, the birds, I say many of them are in specimen drawers in museums and at the University of Hawaii. And there's books about it if you want to look at all the ones that were there. But we don't. We want to look at the ones that are here now. Famous birds. We'll go through some of the famous birds. I'll highlight the ones that I think are the most famous, or the ones I like the best. But there's lots of them, and you can bet they're probably part of the honey creeper family, because everybody's related. It's like Kevin Bacon. You're only a few degrees separated from these guys. So what do we got here? Who have we got that's neat? Well, they're all neat, all neat. Akipa is a good one. They're pretty. They're pretty. Got thrushes. When I show one that's a painting, it's because they don't have a photo. They've been seen in the field, but there's so few of them, or they're so reclusive in their behavior that they've only been painted. And so we have quite a few of those. We'll get some others that you might recognize. So you see a lot of these painted ones, bishops, etc. And these, most of these are all alive, just not a whole lot of them. And then one of my favorite is the iwi. So just if you saw that, like a cardinal, you see a cardinal, which is a state bird in about 5-6 states because they're so demonstratively beautiful. And they're doing okay, but we got to protect them. The crested honeycreeper down there, Akiohikoi, is endangered. I've never seen one in the wild, but they would be definitely worth seeing. We have the crow, alala. There he is, alala. The hawk. So things that you're familiar with in the U.S. that have been over here for a while, and they tend to be like the crow is unique on different islands. They're different species. So you'll have some on the Big Island. They're different than Maui, etc. Even though you think that the distance flying wouldn't be that much, but they've adapted, and once they hung in, like a lot of people, once you land on the Big Island, you don't want to leave. You go to Oahu, you want to stay. Well, the animals are the same. Animals are the same. One of my favorite are the nene. They're on the Big Island, out by the volcanoes. And it's great to see them just running around. I don't know if you can see it there. Normally these images, and you'll see some of them, they're wearing a band. And they're wearing a band because they've been captured, recorded, and we track them. So there's a lot of knowledge from the ornithologist based on tracking them, tagging them, and keeping a record of who's who. Now these we might see coming in. So when we fly in, pay attention to some of these guys. The albatross. Everybody's familiar with the great albatross. And we've got that long tail, if you see it, it would be a tropical bird. So if you see one with a long tail, it's probably a tropical bird. If it's light, you see which one it is. If it's not, it's the other. Then we have petrels, lots of petrels. Hawaiian petrel, storm petrel. That storm petrel looks very much like the storm petrel that I released the other day. And we've had a couple land. Also looks like the Wilson storm petrel. I personally not expert enough to tell the difference between those two, but storm petrels are what we call common all over the world, so they're not endangered per se, but we got lots of petrels. We'll see some terns flying by, so you see a tern, a tern, a tern. You go, okay, how am I supposed to keep these separate? I've asked that of ornithologists for years. So some birds are really easy to determine, but the other ones are just little brown birds or little gray birds. You say, how do you tell the difference? But they're good, so go out with a birder sometime. But we'll see those, some of them. Terns are ones that would see all the time. So take notes, and in the morning at 8 o'clock, we'll compare notes. We'll say, well, it was bright. It was very, very white, had a black beak, da-da-da-da, and we'll okay. So we can collectively identify these. And we've got some birders on board, I know we do, and they are very good, and they will help us identify to whom we are looking at. The iwa, if you see that one, the great frigate bird, I've seen those flying. They're very big and incredible when you see them flying around. And we've got nudies and boobies, and we got all kinds of boobies. So we got the red-footed, brown, and the blue-faced, and another albatross. You don't see them on land so much unless you go to a birding area, but when they fly, they are so beautiful, so beautiful. So what else have we got out here? Plovers, these are your coastal marsh birds that you'll see. That's why we have a chance of seeing some of these. All right. So it's just like in the mainland, but slightly different. So here we've got our scarlet honeycreeper, which I think is so beautiful. You might see one. You might see one. The challenge, and one of the things, just when we're trying to protect our species and doing our best, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, State of Hawaii, doing all kinds of, to protect the forest, to do the right things, right? We're not trying to do the bad thing. We've learned. We're trying to do a better job. But what's happening? The dreaded mosquito. And the dreaded mosquito, anybody like mosquitoes in here? No? Okay, no takers. The mosquito is the big challenge. And we've got critically endangered, and critically endangered as a result of the mosquitoes. Now, why is that? Because certain areas, the mosquitoes didn't go up. I lived in Nairobi, Kenya, which was a mile high. We didn't have mosquitoes. We didn't have malaria. I said we didn't, because now that the weather's changing a little bit, some people say it's getting a little warmer. We can discuss that later. It's moving up the habitat. And so the mosquitoes can now go higher. And they say one bite by these mosquitoes is killing these birds. It's like, whoa. And we just don't have enough mosquito netting or DEET to put on all the birds. So the response is to do landscape mosquito control. And if you've been in the southeast, you know what that means, right? That means spraying, flying, and of course, everybody gets excited. I know they're spraying chemicals to change our minds, and you go, no, they're trying to kill mosquitoes. Just cool it, lower down. That's science. You want to get eaten by mosquitoes? You want malaria? You want dengue fever? Or do you want us to do mosquito abatement? So this is an area that they're looking into it very actively to see what we can do to save them. Because they're beautiful. They're beautiful. And there's nothing like sitting out there and listening to them chirp. And my good friend, who was one of the key U.S. Fish and Wildlife guys and birders, and I asked him how he knew who was where, what, and when. And he goes, it's all by ear. The forest is so dense that it's what they hear. And he described one that they had gotten down a species, and he was hearing the very last male of a species. And you just go, oh, man, talk about a lonely call. The only one in the forest going, hey, baby, hey, baby, hey, baby. So, oh, well. So here's a quick overview of some of them. We'll show you. Hawaiian creeper. They're all creepers, so what the heck. But there's a good, and you can look on the census in terms of this one's endangered. You don't want them on the left side of that image. You want them on the right side of the image. But again, they're all creepers. Let's look at another one. Ah, there he is. Iliwi, the scarlet, right? Pretty. And feel good. They're vulnerable, but they're hanging in there. So I'm always happy when they're on this end of that spectrum there. Say about 350,000 of them still here. So that's comforting. We've got the, oh yes, if I can say it right, Akiapala'au. Obviously, I'm not a Hawaiian ornithologist. But I'll go back. The niche that this one occupies is known as the woodpecker. This is the Hawaiian creeper woodpecker. So it fits in, okay, chip through the bark, get the insects below. So each one is different and has evolved over the years. The, as I said, woodpecker. Now this one, of course, the nene, they believe it's been there for 500,000 years. So 500,000 years since it landed on Hawaii. From where? From Canada. So it's a lot like the Canadian geese, but it's gotten local. And you see it's got a little armband. That armband, so we track them all. They know everybody, Bob, Jane, they know them all. So good old nenes. They're fun. And they fly. So here we have another one, the amakihi. And is this the one? I'm trying to remember. Okay. No. Yes, it is. Its sound is aki-ki-kia. Aki-ki-kia. So when they named it amakiki, you go, well, that's pretty clever. Named it after what they sounded like. We have this guy, Akipa. The Akipa, little band down there. Track them. That's how we're managing them. And it's in the middle. It's in the middle, so we're going to watch them. But they sure are beautiful. This would be the what? The hawk. of course, the Hawaiian hawk. Also, of course, yep. Is it Io? What's his name? Yeah, Io. I call Io. Io. So they're distinctive, and they're doing okay. They're doing okay, which is good. And we have the Omahu. Okay, looks like a blackbird to me. Thrush. Vulnerable. Not okay. So considered vulnerable, close to extinction. Let's do our best. This one's a little closer to extinction because they can't even take a picture of it. So you go, so nice. Yes, there he is. Oh, nice blackbird. Oh, see him over there? That's critical. And now we have what would be our crow, of course, ala'a, or alala. Do you know how to tell the difference between a crow and a raven, by the way? Anybody know? I do. One over there. I love it because they say, well, now I'm confused which one is supposed to be bigger. They said one of them's bigger than the other. Raven's supposed to be bigger than the other. Thank you. Unless you've got them sitting next to each other, how are you going to know which one's bigger? But a raven has a round tail, and a crow has a straight tail. That one guaranteed. So when they fly, their back feathers, when they go and you see them in flight, if it's flat, it's a crow. If it's round, it's a raven. But the idea of which one's bigger, unless you're like Audubon, and I used to live next to his house in Key West, you know how he got all his birds, right? He said, I got them on the rise with a 10-shot. So that's how he collected them. So here's a picture of the different crows on the different island. So you can see that they have different species and they've got different skulls and stuff that they've brought back to give an idea of how they spread, etc. So a lot of good research, a lot of cooperation. Yes. Here's another one. Ili Paio. Easy for you to say. Pretty birds. Not doing as bad as some of the others, so that's good. It's good. And there's, again, unique species on each island, so they've adapted. So everybody picks their favorite island. That's the way we do it. Now, we pick our favorite islands because not so long ago, the Polynesians came here and everybody came around. And Dr. Linda, who's near and dear, we have a difference of opinion on one thing. The beautiful clothes that were developed for the royalty, it took a lot of birds, and a lot of the birds that aren't here anymore are in those capes. So royalty was rough on some of the species, but this was a long time ago, so we won't give them a hard time. If we look back in the past at our ancestors, we'll see that there's a big debate right now about who and where we came from. They're finding new species of humans, little this, that, and the other. And I want you to pay attention to where it's coming from, right? Okay, you look down there, you say, okay, Malaysia and down below Java, and you say, okay, so this is where new species, fluorescence, and that they're showing up. Denisovas, which they call the hobbits, they think they were about this big, but they were ancestors of the Homo ancestors, not necessarily Homo sapiens. We came up a different way, but so there's been a lot of that going on for a long time as we evolved, and you know how it is. Around Thanksgiving, all your relatives come together, and you have some differences, but that's the way it is. So habilis stuff. So we're finding out stuff all the time. Modern genetics has really helped us understand this. So in the last 20 years, revolution in genetics. Revolution. And that revolution has taught us about the revolution of the evolution, since the dinosaurs landed. And when the dinosaurs left because of the meteorite, which was right down there in the bottom, we had our little rodent ancestor, and we all came down. So 300,000 years ago, we've been here that long. The Nene has been on Hawaii longer than we've been around as a species. It's very complex. But when we think about radiation, evolution, and the Polynesian influence on Hawaii and the South Pacific, you go, okay, these things are all connected. Transport, heraldry, all of these things coming together. And this was launched in proud part of Hawaiian recognition of their cultural history. They went and relaunched this guy, the Hukule, they call it the Star of the Gladness, in '76, when there's been a real renaissance. And I know Linda's talked about that in terms of awareness and pride in the ancestry. And part of that includes things like recognizing that they had somebody called the Konahiki who was in charge of the different areas. Maintain it and do it right. So the realm of the people, where you grow things, all the way down to the coral reefs, which fish were put into the ponds to protect. They were very much in tune with their ecosystem. So the Hawaiians have been a poster child of, except for those royal cloaks, they've been a poster child of blending in with nature and keeping the thing going. So they basically, we learn a lot about sustainability from the indigenous people that live in Hawaii. And indigenous cultures around the planet are now speaking up and being extremely active in the international scene, in the United Nations, about we want to preserve the planet. Let's listen to people that were here a long time, not just those in 1780 that came over and landed in Hawaii. So we're learning lessons from people that we thought were ignorant savages, right? We call them savages. Turns out they weren't savages of the landscape. And so in that pride, the Hawaiians are now teaching their kids about these systems. And so the next generation that are wanting to be Hawaiians and be proud, they're learning about, yes, these are the things, these are the lessons we need to learn to keep the land and Hawaii as it should be. And that includes coral species in terms of how we can maintain them. So there's a lot of research, a lot of people participating. So it's an exciting time to be Hawaiian because you're beginning to touch with your culture, learning the language, learning the song, learning hula. I'll talk about that next one. And it's very exciting, very exciting. Now, the big guys for Hawaii that they consider the state animals, who can say that first fish? Hama, hama, nuka, nuka, apawaha. This is good. This is good. This one's easier. Humpback. Humpback. And then the butterfly, that's easy. Kamea, kamea. That's an easy one. So see, you're already there. You've got 3 species for Hawaii that you've got. Getting your money's worth today. And we got the nene, showed that. And then the monk seal, and we'll show you a picture of a monk seal shortly. So there's a lot of different marine mammals. I won't go over that. I wouldn't abuse you, but there's a bunch of them. And out there in the ocean, I haven't seen one of these ever in the ocean, but they're out there. And false killer whales. We got our fin whales. Lots of fin whales out there. A lot of them up there near Iceland. So if you go up there, you're guaranteed to see them. North Pacific right whale, which is not so bad. The North Atlantic right whale, there's only like 300 of them, so much less. Sea whale's another one that's not doing too bad. Sperm whale, they're out there in the ocean. I've never seen one in the ocean, but off of Dominica, there's a whole bunch of them. So I am planning a trip down there to watch. And again, they're the most family-oriented whale around. They just hang out. And in my last talk on whales, I'll tell you about the communication. But they sit there and they talk to each other. And we're learning kind of things they're talking about. Now, is that a guy cute? Look at that. Definitely cute. And we are blessed today because Mike Bradley, one of our favorite lecturers, this is his film. So he was down there. Remember, this is 6 foot long. And by the way, that's the visibility for most of the underwater world. Beautiful fish. Thank you, Mike. So if you ever get to go scuba diving or on a tour, even skin diving, you can see these guys. You go, yes, yes, yes. Gotta love it. So there you've seen a Hawaiian mammal, marine mammal. Now, these are my favorite turtles. And they got them all. So these are the turtles. Aren't they cute? Now the green turtle, coming from Key West, we used to eat these on a regular basis. So I sure hope when I go to heaven it's not run by the turtles, because I'm going to not end up there otherwise. But they're beautiful, wonderful creatures, one of my favorites. There's the hawksbill, just so sweet. And they're so gentle, and you watch them swim. It's like ballet, Get the leatherbacks. That's why they're doing a lot of protection on the beaches, so people are getting hip. And light pollution is one of the threats. Talk about that later. But light pollution, and then stealing their eggs. Because natives used to love their eggs. Dig them up. No more eating the eggs. And there you go. And that's indubitably a mother who just laid their eggs. And you can tell because she's been digging in the sand, the loggerheads. And then we've got Olive Ridley, all right. And I've actually never seen one of those in the wild. The manta rays are awesome if you've been in the water, and they're big guys. Been in boats where they jump out of the water, and you're in a 25-foot fishing boat, and they're bigger than you. So it is amazing when they come out of the water, but beautiful. If you see these in the water and you're swimming around, I suggest you go the other direction, because they have bitten off little girls' arms off of Hawaii. So they will eat you. And this is what it's all about. Enjoying the beach with your buddies. Enjoying the beach. Now, the other animals that we will probably see, which ones is always the debate, because this is how you see them. You go, oh, I saw it. And go out there in the Explorer's Lounge. We look out there. We go, hey, what's that? So we'll talk about it. We'll go, oh, okay, it had a fin like this. We saw coloration. We'll end up sharing the identification by your observation. So that's the key. Start paying attention to one thing or the other till you get it. Might see those pilot whales. Here's another dolphin. You say, that's the short beak. How do you tell? So you got to look at the coloration, and we'll talk about it. We'll go to a book, and we'll say which one it is. Rough tooth. If I'm not looking at it in the mouth, how am I going to know? We got Rizos. I've never seen a Rizos. Pygmy, killer whales, pantropical. And they're all, remember the genetics? You'll notice a lot of them have a similar characteristics. It's why you really got to hone in on some of those identification components so we can come together and say, I saw a stripe on the side. So you gotta focus on that when we're out there looking. Melonhead. It's my wife's favorite term for me. Okay. We've got killer whales, orcas. Everybody knows those. And then Fraser dolphins. So you could see it. Okay, those would be easy to look at the identifications. Oh, there was a white band, a dark band, etc. False killer whale. The common bottlenose. So you see these everywhere. Again, you see some of those coloration on the side. We have to pick them out, because if you say, oh, I saw it had a dorsal fin, you go, yeah, really? Okay. So it's not always easy to distinguish those, but you all are above average. I know that you'll be able to share with us when you see one out of your stateroom or off the front. You'll be able to come back and say, write it down, say, okay, this had a white, there was a gray band, etc. We'll be able to tell, especially if you take a picture, and we'll be able to determine what species you saw. So these you'll probably see coming in as we go around the islands. So keep an eye out. Now you know that if you wait, it's the morning when you're 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, that's when to look out there, because it's just right, the lighting's right. You'll be able to appreciate, take a picture, and enjoy it. So I hope you keep a sharp eye out. Share with us in the morning with your cup of coffee. Got fine little things to eat up there in the Explorer's Lounge. A whole bunch of us are hanging out in the morning, swapping lives. So please do join us, because we want you to enjoy the wildlife. Yes. All right. Have a good one, my friends.